TIFU, not going to the hospital. Sunday, April 2nd, 2017 started like any other Sunday for me. I woke up, did a little workout, and then headed out for the day to get some errands done. Number 1 on the agenda was to get both my girlfriend's oil changed, as well as my own. I drove down to the oil place and got hers done first, then drove back to her house and picked up my car. I drove back to oil change place in my car and had them start on changing the oil on my car. I was sitting in the waiting room watching YouTube videos when the event occurred that would forever change my life. As I watched the video, I felt a headache hit right behind my right eye and travel straight back to the back of my skull. Having never had a migraine before, I assumed that this is what it feels like and muscled through it. The pain was unrelenting but not unbearable, though I was a bit concerned at how fast it struck. They finished the oil, and as they did, I texted my girlfriend to let her know that I had a headache and would be heading back to her house to nap it off. I got back to her house, popped a couple ibuprofen, mistake, and took a nap. I woke up hours later still feeling this intense pain in my head. I decided I would sleep it off the rest of the night, and in the morning, I would be good to go to work. I woke up Monday morning still feeling like shit, and decided I was in zero shape to drive to work, let alone work construction all day, with the way that my head was feeling. My girlfriend tried her best to convince me that I needed to go to the ER, but I told her I just needed more rest and would be fine. She reluctantly let me try to rest as much as I could for the rest of the day, but my symptoms were not getting better. The only relief I could find was taking painkillers, which I'm not a big fan of, and napping. I woke up Tuesday with the same symptoms, and it was at this point that my girlfriend decided enough is enough. Against my protest, she dragged me to the ER and saved my life. I went into the ER and told them my symptoms, also telling them that I have an extreme phobia of hypodermic needles and anything intravenous. They sent me to do a CT scan of my head, without the contrast, because I wouldn't let them tap an IV on my arm. The CT scan was performed, and I was brought back to the room to await the results. As I sat there, I caught the doctor who was seeing me jogging down the hallway. It was at this point I knew something was fucked up. Dave Chappelle voice. The doctor came flying into the room and said, "Hey, listen man, you've had a stroke and you've got a pretty major bleed going in your brain right now. I need to tap an IV on you right now, do another CT scan with the contrast, and then get you out of this hospital and to Stanford ASAP." My life stopped. A stroke? I'm 29? How could I have had a stroke? I couldn't comprehend what was happening, but I looked to my girlfriend and asked her to phone my mother right away. I got on the phone with my mom, and while choking back tears, tried to explain to her what was happening. Side note, I live in California but grew up in New Jersey, which is where all my family still resides. I quickly gave her a brief rundown and then got off the phone as the doctors were trying to move quickly on this. I asked her to please call my dad and hung up. What happened next is a whirlwind. They tapped an IV, did a CT scan, then I was transported by ambulance to Stanford ICU. I was greeted by the entire neurology department, both residents and students alike. The first woman I met said she couldn't believe I was even still awake, let alone walking and talking. She told me, usually with something like this there are only 2 ways people come in here, either in a coma or dead. As I laid in ICU, they tapped an A-line directly into the artery in my wrist, and then 2 more IVs, for a total of 4, into my other arm. They had me sign over my power of attorney right away because they were absolutely sure that my condition would deteriorate and I wouldn't be capable of making decisions for myself. They were artificially lowering my blood pressure to prevent more bleeding into the brain, as well as had some other fluids running through me. My parents flew in from Jersey by the next day, and I was sent for an angiogram later that afternoon, Wednesday. If you've never had an angiogram, consider yourself lucky. I've had 3. They lay you on a table and sedate you with drugs, though you are not asleep. They then tap your femoral artery through your groin and run a catheter all the way up to your neck, where they directly inject contrast dye to get a more clear picture of the veins and arteries in your brain. Let me repeat, you are awake for this. The first angiogram was inconclusive because there was too much blood in my brain. The blood actually blocked the picture, and they couldn't see anything. I was stabilized, the bleed had stopped, and I was allowed to leave the hospital by Friday morning. I used up all my FMLA leave, 12 weeks, and have been on disability since. But wait, there's more. 6 weeks later, I had to go back to Stanford for another angiogram to try and solve the mystery of what caused the stroke. This time, they found the culprit. I had what is known as an arteriovenous fistula burst inside my brain. It's when an artery incorrectly attaches itself to a vein and pumps high-pressure blood into a low-pressure system, thus causing the vein to burst. To my understanding, the only way this happens is either from a major blow to the head, which I did not take, or from a case of bad luck, which sounds more my speed. 6 weeks after finding out what caused the stroke, I went in to have a fully invasive surgery, performed to fix the issue. I was put to sleep, had my head cut open, and my brain operated on for 12 hours by the best neurosurgeons in the world. A third angiogram was performed while I was asleep because they could not locate the fistula at first. I awoke later that night in the most immense amount of pain I have ever been in. While I was asleep, 2 more IVs had been put into my arm, an A-line had been put in my wrist again, and I had a C-line, which is an IV in your chest that runs to your heart, put in as well. The fentanyl was about 5 minutes of relief, followed by 55 minutes of me begging for more painkillers. They could only dose me once per hour. Needless to say, it was the longest night of my life. The surgery was a complete success, and the doctors told me I would never have to deal with something like this happening again in my life. The next day, after the surgery, I realized that I had double vision so bad that I couldn't see with both my eyes open. It was either one or the other. I had to patch my eye until I could see a vision therapist a few weeks later. My surgery was on a Wednesday, and by Friday I was released, though still in an incredible amount of pain. Fast forward to October 2nd, 2017. My vision was nearly back to normal, and after 6 months of being on disability, I was finally ready to return to work. I was so excited my first day back, even though I wasn't in the field and was simply doing work in the tool room. Around 11:30 a.m., I took my lunch and finished reading my book I had been reading. At 12:30 p.m., I returned to work, and about 10 minutes later, I decided I had to use the bathroom. I left the tool room trailer, walked across the yard to bathroom, did my business, and walked back to the tool room. As I walked back, I looked to my left to see what foreman had just pulled back into the yard, then quickly back to the tool room door. Only, there was a problem. I could see the door, but in my peripheral vision, there was what I describe as a floating bubble that had the scene from my left still playing in it like it was on repeat, and it was flashing like a strobe light. I got into the tool room, sat down and tried my best to blink away whatever this was. I started getting nauseous, lightheaded, and my left foot began to tingle. I think I tried to call my fiancé. We got engaged after the stroke in April for help, but I don't remember because I blacked out. Next thing I remember was a foreman standing over me, asking if I was all right, and all I could think was, how'd this guy get in my bedroom? I was delirious. I had smashed my face on the concrete when I fell and had busted my eye and bent my glasses. My supervisor took me to the ER where they did CT scans, blood work, EKG, and chest x-rays. My white cell count was through the roof, but they couldn't find any sign of infection, so they diagnosed it as dehydration and syncope, passing out. I did a follow-up with my PCP, primary care physician, and when looking at the blood work, she asked for me to go back to Stanford Neurology to talk with them. And so and this is where I am today. I was diagnosed with a seizure disorder. The issue, as I've been told, is a direct result of the stroke and not the surgery. Due to the amount of time I allowed blood to flow into my brain, it has caused bruising and damage to that area of my brain, which is what led to me having the seizure. Had I gone to the ER right when it happened, things may be different today. What this means for me now is I'll likely lose my Class A license, and my career of doing physical work is over. Thank God the company I work for is so large that they can move me to another position where I won't be doing that type of work. However, that still does not change the hurt and disappointment I feel. Working construction has been my all-time favorite. I'm a blue-collar guy, and I get a sense of accomplishment at the end of each day. I've poured blood, sweat, and tears into this career, and now that aspect of it is over. My days of being on a crew, joking around with the guys, and generally having a good time while doing the physical work we do is done. It sucks. I'm not happy about it, but I don't let it change my outlook on life. I refuse to give up on life. I can get through anything, and I will get through this. I'm out of work until January 8th, 2018, at which point I will return and meet my new tasks with the same passion as I did before. I tell this story as a bit of caution to anyone else out there. Please, I'm begging you, if you ever feel like something is wrong with you, do not hesitate. Go to the hospital. Don't be like me, Mr. Tough Guy, thinking you can get through it. You know your body better than anyone else on this planet, which means you also know when things aren't right. I thank you all for taking the time out of your day to read my story. May God bless your life and your health.